I had the opportunity to engage with Honorable Prime Minister couple of years back, 2 साल पहले, where we met to discuss about tourism and travel के अंदर में क्या opportunities हो सकती हैं. I got I think 15 minutes of time. True to the fact, meeting started 1 minute before time. Meeting went a few minutes ahead. But that 15 to 20 minutes was undivided discussion on travel and tourism. It felt to me as the Prime Minister understands and thinks about travel and tourism only, even though I know that he has probably 1,000 other things to deal with. So very deep ability to have attention and not just macro conversation, right? Generally आपको लगेगा कि if he is the Prime Minister of the world's second biggest country and the world's largest democracy, he would only be thinking 30,000 feet above, but he can have discussions which are right down at the absolute ground level, and let me give some examples on it. So we were discussing about what has worked for us. So I explained that what has worked for us is we've gone to small property owners, helped them improve their infrastructure and get revenue, because I have learned that in India supply is the problem, not demand. If you get good quality products at right price, consumers need that. So he mentioned in similar vein, इंडिया इज़ एन एग्रेरियन इकोनॉमी. हमारे देश में इतने फार्मर्स हैं, सबकी इनकम कभी थोड़ी सी ज़्यादा हो सकती है, कभी थोड़ी कम हो सकती है. ऑन द अदर हैंड, पीपल वांट टू गो टू दिस विलेजेस, सी दिस हाउसेस, सी दिस विलेज accommodation and learn from it and experience it. So you mentioned, why don't you try village tourism to be able to enable some of these farmers to be able to have sustainable long-term source of income, and for urban dwellers to be able to see what truly a village life is, which frankly I can tell you, a lot of my colleagues, their children also, they hope that someday they can take their children to a village, show how the village environment is, and so on. So in this is in the middle of COVID. So we thought might as well experiment with it. So we went to a village in Gujarat, took a certain number of farmers and started doing business with them. I'm so happy to tell you that across the pandemic, each one of these homes made 50,000 plus rupees of income per month. There is one of our owners, Raju Bhai, who has not just gotten his one home, he's now gotten one more room constructed, which he is using now. And he is now, as we speak, becoming our reseller, where he is now going and selling our service to other farmers, saying, I have been using Oyo and look how well it has done for me in the same environment. So one conversation, just a minute and a half, has translated into an opportunity that not just Toyo, any company can go to the village tourism, which by the way houses a large part of Indian population, enables consumers to have a unique experience by themselves and creates an industry by itself. I think this ability of having massive depth and then massive breadth, I always say looking, with telescope and microscope at the same time. I think that makes our Honorable Prime Minister, I have told this a few times, he is truly a startup Prime Minister. I mentioned to Honorable Prime Minister that my mother for the longest time thought that pursuing entrepreneurship was a bad decision. And it was probably because some of my friends convinced me to do entrepreneurship, which is probably not the right thing to do. The first time when the Prime Minister talked about me in Startup India, I think my mom sent me a message, you must be doing something right, of course in Hindi. So I was telling our Honorable Prime Minister that while there are many professional growth that startups in India have benefited by his policies, but I have personally also benefited because my mom is now okay with me to pursue entrepreneurship. I think also I have seen this not just with ourselves, I have seen this with other industry leaders also. So I have seen, for instance, he can, we just discussed about travel and tourism. He has the same ability to discuss with same level of depth in any industry. So I have seen him having a discussion about data center का expansion कैसे होगा, renewable energy में right from solar से लेकर के ethanol में location कौन सी होगी, उसका जो raw materials हैं जिससे पैनल्स इंडिया में मैन्युफैक्चर हो सकें, उसके लिए क्या ज़रूरत है, PLI में एट अ कंपनी लेवल कैसे बेनिफिट लेकर के आए. आप जब इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के बारे में इंडिया में सोचते हैं, आप सिर्फ रोड, रेलवे, हाईवे यही सोचते हैं. बट आई हैव सीन दैट व्हेनेवर आई हैव बीन इन, जनरली हमारी मुलाकात इंडस्ट्री ग्रुप्स के साथ होती है, So I've seen in industry groups you'd have discussion about consumer electronics. Like for example, India this year will be probably the biggest single country of consumer electronic manufacture. Very rarely do people know about it. Drone, recently there was a big drone policy and reform launches. India is becoming the hotbed of drone manufacturing, innovation, etc. that you see around yourself. In each of these industries, such level of depth in my view is unparalleled, and that's what sort of in some way is leading all these industries to grow quite quickly. He's an incredible listener, right? Where if you're in an industry delegation, he would listen to every item. So let me give an example specifically in one of our industry delegations, which was pre-budget, right? There was a CII delegation and a few other industry delegations who had combined to travel with other technology CEOs. I had the good honor of being there. So for example, his perspective was long-term value is created by investing in infrastructure, right? So if tourism needs to expand, we should make large-scale long-term infrastructure investments around which the industry can benefit from it. Kevadia in Gujarat is a great example of it, where, as you know, the world's tallest statue, and I had the good honor, of course, of visiting the, statue. I think you could have, like, it could easily have been just one statue, but I highly encourage people to make a visit to Ekta Nagar or Kevadia. There is everything from rapids for rafting, you have cactus gardens, you have garden-based restaurants, you have jungle safaris, like you name it. It is an experience that is one of a kind. That infrastructure has now allowed a huge hotel industry to flourish there. Infrastructure creation, whether in Ekta Nagar or in Kashi, Assi Ghat railway station, Vishwanath Ji's temple. It is incredible how the city has transformed between earlier and before. And that has had a direct knock-on effect in everyone in the ecosystem, whether you're an auto driver, whether you are right outside the temple selling products, whether you are somebody who is a tourist guide. All of these additional growth in economy in some way is beneficial to the government as well, because the government gets tax returns on every part of it. So forward-looking 5, 10, 15, 20-year infrastructure investments is something that I've found fascinating about Prime Minister Modi ji as a long-term reformist and a long-term value creator. He has many attributes of an entrepreneur, right? He thinks big in terms of impact, but before doing so, he experiments that at a small scale. His ability of being able to look at large-scale initiatives, but then tracking its execution very closely. So, just for example, why, like, Startup India is one enabler, but it doesn't happen, like 100 unicorns don't get created out of one initiative, right? So there were quite a few things, all had to come together for us to be here. And I can tell you that the world and even Indian own entrepreneurial ecosystem and our talent is in surprise about how have we been able to get there. Every idea and recommendation which can make a positive difference, we've seen that get executed at magical speed, which is why I said our Prime Minister is a startup Prime Minister. I think our country has a leader who's saying that we are not satisfied by being, incremental, just being where we are in status quo. We are a country where we have 1 billion plus people with an aspiration and inspiration to be the best in the world and the largest in the world. In economy, in startups, in unicorns, in jobs, and so on.